Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Marketing Podcast, your source for all things marketing. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Aaron Christopher Evans on the line, also known as AC. He's the co-founder and CEO over at Drips. AC, welcome to the show.
Adam, thanks for having me.
Oh, man, so I'm excited to get into today's topic. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives listening to this today, and how businesses can and should use text messaging. I know you're the pro at that, and a lot of people listening because they want to know how to do it too. But just to provide some context as to why you're the guy to be on the show to talk about that, tell us a little bit more about your company, please. Drips.
Sure, yeah. Drips, founded in 2014. We started out as just a normal SMS marketing type tool, realized quickly that people wanted to hold conversations, and we founded a whole new category, what we call conversational texting, which is very germane to, I'm sure, what you see a lot of conversational marketing. We focus on the phones, but that's it. I mean, we just scaled up. We're working with some of the biggest brands in the country, Liberty Mutual type companies, companies like ADT and others to help them converse with their clients.
Man, that's awesome. And I think that's a great transition. I want to just dive into today's topic. So how businesses can and should use text messaging. I mean, maybe because you've been in this business for a while now, maybe it just starts to give us an overview of kind of what's possible.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot. There's 1,000 different texting companies out there. There's a lot of chatbot companies. The way Drips does it is pretty unique and pretty different and pretty focused. Like we focus primarily on financial services, insurances, home services, healthcare, essentially really big companies that have really big databases of consumers that they have to hold conversations with or push them to try to get from point A to point B. It could be signing a piece of paper, could be adhering to patient protocols, could be showing up to an appointment. But so that's how we help enterprises. We can get into that later when we talk about big enterprises, but everything is possible now. I mean, you can build a simple, transactional message with Twilio, send a text for less than a penny. There are really good, platforms out there like Text Us is a really nice one that I like if you're a small business. And if you're an enterprise, again, there's just a lot to it. It's a heavily regulated area, so generally they're going to want to work with companies like mine that have some subject matter expertise around, how and where to use this channel.
And that's a good point. So at the end of this, I'm going to give you an opportunity to leave your, website or wherever you want people to go to connect with you and your team. What's typically a good fit in terms of a client to work with you and your team?
Yeah, for us, it's what we categorize as enterprise. I mean, any companies that are in either performance marketing that have large volume, meaning they're doing thousands of leads a day, or insurance companies, insurance carriers, companies like I said, like Liberty Mutual, or smaller regional carriers like Gainsco was one of our first insurance companies, and they're down in Dallas, more of a regional carrier that State Farm just bought. And all the way through home services, companies like Roto-Rooter, Terminex, 3-Day Blinds, Windows by Anderson, carpet companies, essentially things that are considered purchases or, long lifetime value of consumers. We don't work in or focus on e-com or restaurants or small SMBs, though I do, know how they should be and could be leveraging the
So I know that, every business you work with is going to have a different need, a different want, a different, problem to solve. But I know working with as many large clients as you have, that certain themes tend to arise. Where do you find people go wrong on these strategies? Like that happens just time and time again. You're like, oh man, we're going to be able to really help them with this. This is exciting.
That's a great question. There's a lot that goes wrong. I think one of the biggest ones is just all these large companies and even bigger SMBs and middle market companies are still relying on what I consider kind of legacy outreach methodologies. I don't know about you, but I only answered this call because I knew you were calling, right? We had it scheduled. We had sent back and forth a handful of emails to figure out the right time for both of us. That's not just how business people operate now. That's how consumers operate. So if you're just trying to cold call somebody and they don't have your number saved, the chances of them picking up are just diminishing every day. Then you think of email. How many hundreds of emails do you get a day? Thousands of emails do you get a day? It's any email from any company, whether you want it or not, is lost in a sea of emails, like finding a needle in a stack of needles. And then you got direct mail. And, again, I don't know about you, but I don't carefully comb through my direct mail anymore. I just give it a quick glance, throw away 90% of it, hope I didn't throw away anything important. And that's the biggest problem is this has always worked, methodology. And when companies get into SMS, they often don't look into the law well enough. It's a heavily regulated industry. Anytime you do anything automatically with telephones, there's a law called the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And a lot of companies get zinged. Big companies, you see these class actions all the time, big banks, big travel companies. So I think they have to do a better level of due diligence. Their marketing department should be very careful when they're just spinning up these types of programs willy-nilly, because if you start using those types of tools and you don't have the right kind of consents in place, there's some real teeth to these laws now.
No, that's a great point. And you mentioned that you work with a lot of financial firms and large companies in the finance or financial services space. So how and it's just one of those things. There's some CMOs listening to this right now that are like, oh, I want to do text, but this is just going to be such a a nightmare getting set up, and we're still doing this and this and this. How hard, or what does that life cycle look like? And it doesn't have to be like a huge company, but like a Liberty. I think you said you were at Liberty, but like for just your good sized company, like what does the life cycle getting something even set up look like?
It just depends on the size and the need. If you are a small, Etsy shop, you can spin up. There's tons of different plugins out there they kind of got all that stuff figured out and built in for you. You know what I mean? Like in the framework, you're going to capture the right kind of consent. They're going to have some controls in place. You're just delivering coupon codes, things like that. It's not that difficult. It's more when you start getting into, like you said, like financial information or patient care, or what is PII? Can you send somebody a text saying that they owe money and show how much money they owe? Like what happens if their wife sees that? What kind of repercussions are there? So unfortunately, when you get into those types of more sensitive areas, it is very, very nuanced. There's our TCPA attorney, Eric Troutman. He's probably the best at this law, TCPA specifically, and he has a website, tcpaworld.com, where he writes just wonderful blogs. He's one of the best content producers I've ever seen, specifically and especially for a lawyer, giving all that away for free. But I think just educating yourself on that kind of stuff, like understanding at least the basics, before you jump into something like this is of the utmost importance. Understanding the difference between a marketing message and an administrative message. It's very different, understanding what pre-existing business relationships are versus prior express written consent. Very different. And unfortunately, there's tons of nuance to it.
So, AC, we've gone through, kind of some of the compliance side and setting it up and all that. But, on the other side of this, so once the company goes through, getting it set up, getting everything going, what kind of responses have you heard from the companies themselves on, once they're on the other side of having this done?
Oh, yeah, great questions. The responses have been phenomenal. That's why we've been able to grow the company as quickly as we can. And I think we're up to over 90 people now, just trying to keep up with the market and the responses that we are getting. But there's three major responses that we see and things that we aim for. There's some sort of OpEx savings, right? Like you think of, less outbound call center agents, less waste, so there's a savings that there's always had. Then there's a performance lift. So if you're just using a call center and some direct mail and some email, and you layer in drips or a system like it, your contact rate, engagement rate, sell-through rate, quote rate, whatever it is gonna profoundly increase. So you have a performance lift there. There's efficiencies that are had, and then ultimately it's the user experience that I think these companies are starting to care so much about. With the prevalence of social media and review sites and all this, like you can't treat kind of customers the way you used to, or they'll go somewhere else. Very plain and simple. That's why people use Uber these days instead of taxis. It's all about the experience.
It's awesome. And yeah, I figured as much because I know, like, I've heard and I've seen businesses that have set up and implemented great campaigns, whether it was, again, just to give information, whether it was for sales, there's a lot of different reasons that people, the main thing with texting is it's communication. It's a communication channel. So I've seen so many people benefit from it, and I've benefited as a consumer. Like, there's a couple of companies that obviously set it up, and they that's how they market to me, and that's how I interact with them. A simple example, and I guess this would be the most rudimentary, simple example, is I have a dentist appointment next week, and I got my confirmation by text, and I just hit the yes, and it's done, and I don't have to deal with it. Before, once upon a time, that was a phone call, and that was back and forth, and that was a number I didn't have saved in my phone, so I never answered it, and that was like me going to the dentist like, oh, you never replied, so we didn't know. That happened to me once, and I'm like, well, why am I going to answer your call? I don't, like, so, like, all these little things, like, work. So I'm a huge fan of text, as you can see. But that being said, AC, so if somebody is listening to this and they want more information or they want to connect with you and your team, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, simple. It's just drips.com. We have a blog there, news there, a ton of information there. Link outs should be there to, like I said, tcpaworld.com, Eric's, our counsel's blog, if they're interested in more of the regulatory side of things. But yeah, we got web chat on there if they want to ask questions. We're always happy to help. Like, while we do work with upper, middle market enterprise companies, we don't disqualify people before we talk to them. We always are happy to point them to something that's more appropriate for them to get them going in this channel. It's something every company should be doing. I'm seeing it speed up now. So it's kind of like email in the 1990s or social media, 5-10 years ago. It's like you just have to have a strategy for texting now.
Fantastic. Well, AC, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background, all the great things you're doing over at Drips. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review in the Apple iTunes Store. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Marketing, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments on the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And AC, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Adam.